Right, welcome back. And that was a quick look on into the Arab news or the Arab most important events that took place during this week. Returning back to our discussion and our topic and the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum in Russia. To highlight the issue, we have with us over the phone Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister and the Secretary General of the Arab Investors Union. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you so much, Your Excellency. And we have seen President Sisi yesterday addressing this important gathering, which is taking place in Russia, elaborating on how this or the world developments is reflecting on the Arab and Africa at large, and particularly on Egypt. How did you read the President's speech?
First, I am happy to see our foreign policy expanding everywhere, from the far east in Tokyo till the far west in Paris. Now it is up till the north in Moscow or St. Petersburg, and so on. So, number two, our president was there through a video conference to explain our position as Egypt, the Arab world, and Africa. And here we are in a position where we are not adding at all to the pollution of the world environment, while the most industrialized countries are doing this, especially those who are present in St. Petersburg. And the deal is we shall, of course, try to do our best to make our environment much better. But the reality is that we are sharing one earth. So we are enjoying or suffering from one climate, whether you are in Washington or you are in South Africa. So the task in Sharm el-Sheikh next November is not that easy, and we have to come to a sort of a deal between the highly industrialized countries and the countries in Asia and in Africa, where we are suffering from this. And the trick there, if you want to get better environment, it costs money. I lived for some time in my work in Europe, and there since the 90s and the 80s, they started to treat the exhaust of their cars. It's not like ours. It is not sending carbon like our cars in our countries, because they have millions of cars of coal there. So we are on the track trying to make our life in this concern much better, or a little bit better by step by step. And the dialogue is there, and I am happy as a diplomat seeing my president is leading all our diplomatic efforts in many conferences like that one. And we are present everywhere at the presidential level, which is very important as a diplomatic weapon.
Yes, Your Excellency, here the President has focused, or the main focus was how the international world crisis, particularly the Ukraine-Russian war, has been reflecting on the African continent, on the Arab world, on Egypt also, and how is that development that has followed the pandemic, the world pandemic, has caused a kind of disruption to the global supply chain systems. He also spoke about the importance of finding solutions to how these crises are reflecting on the world. So how do you view his words? How are the international crises really reflecting on the Arab and the African worlds?
As a matter of fact, as you well know, I am mainly optimistic. But here I am a little bit concerned about that the highly developed countries in meetings like that, they promise many things, but on the ground they do not fulfill all their promises. And here we are talking about finance, whether finance for the economic impact of the virus, Corona-19, or the economic impact of the war between Russia and their neighbor, or now we are talking about the environment. Always I realize, and I am old enough to see much more of the history, the recent history, that always we have promises, but on the ground we do not receive any fulfillment of those promises. But let us continue. And of course, the heavyweight of countries like Egypt and our friends in the third world, in the Arab world, in Africa, in Asia, can make a sort of pressure in order to make a sort of development and progress in these problems. Let us hope and see. And I have all confidence in our diplomacy and the non-alignment diplomacy also. All these forces of our foreign affairs are within our capacity, and we are doing our best to get the best possible solution for whatever we are worried about.
When the president spoke or addressed this international forum in Russia, the president said that Egypt was among a few countries in the world that achieved economic growth despite all challenges, and asserted his Egypt's keenness to apply a long-term strategy to maintain growth rates. But he also addressed some of the problems that are really facing the economies of the whole world, and part of the world is us as Egypt, us as Africa, us as the Arab world. How is the world reeling from the latest global crisis, and what is really needed at this upcoming stage in order to be able to fulfill, or rather take down the huge burden on our shoulders?
Here in this specific point, I am happy that Egypt succeeded to face all the challenges recently, whether the disease, whether the war, or the lack of energy, or the lack of food, successfully. We faced this successfully. Why? Because we took the right decision in the right time, and it was a courageous decision to start our economic reform since November 2016. So when the problems started to attack all the world, we were already standing on very strong feet. The World Bank and the IMF is telling us that the whole world economy is diminishing this year, and all the speculations are not optimistic, except very few countries, less than 5 countries, Egypt among them, is continuing growth positively. And the estimation that Egypt will reach nearly 7% growth. This is good news, but it's not enough. We want to increase this because we have, of course, as you well know, the population challenge, and we have to cover the increase in our population, which is really huge. Another thing that we are trying to attract the attention of the highly wealthy and developed countries to help Africa and to help the relatively needy Arab countries in order to face those problems. And I think the world is doing not that bad, but it's not enough. We need more finance to help those who cannot face the epidemic problem or the war problem, the lack of food. This is another dimension of what we're facing. And thank God that in Egypt we are in a much better situation than others, but even so, we are leading the forces who are keen to help Africa and the Arab world and the developing countries to face all these problems. It's a huge effort, it's a diplomatic effort, but Egypt is up to it.
Yes, indeed, indeed, Your Excellency. If I may end here our discussion to this topic with your reading to the Egyptian-Russian relations and cooperation at this very particular stage.
This is one very good question here, because as you will know, up till early in the 70s, the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc were occupying more than 60% of our foreign trade, and they were our economic partner. Since the collapse of the communism and the collapse of the Wall of Berlin, we call it, in 1989, the effort and the activities of this bloc was diminishing, and they became marginalized in our economy. Now we are going everywhere, and we have excellent relations, as you will know, with the European Union, with the Arab world, and Africa. And we shouldn't neglect those old partners. So, as you well know, we started receiving presidents from Hungary, from Romania, from Poland, and our president went there for some countries. And now it is Russia itself, the largest country in all this group. It was an old friend, an old market for all our exports, and it's a good idea to restore this market, because it ends by more production, more exports, and more jobs, and creating new jobs for our young generation. And this is, of course, a very important step and very successful one.
Right. Your Excellency, Ambassador Gamal Bayoumi, former Assistant Foreign Minister and the Secretary General of the Arab Investors Union, thank you so much for being with us over the phone and for your input here. The President has reiterated that Egypt and Russia have joint projects in various fields, and referred to many of the projects that are being implemented. Here is a report on the President's speech before the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum in Russia.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has invited the companies partaking at St. Petersburg International Economic Forum and other companies to benefit from the mega investment opportunities in Egypt in all fields. In a recorded speech on Friday at the 25th session of the forum, el-Sisi said the Egyptian government managed to advance the country's structure in order to be able to attract more foreign investments. This qualified Egypt to come in the first place regarding attracting foreign investment in Africa, and to become one of the few countries in the world to be able to achieve a growth rate that has reached to 3.3% in 2021, despite the negative challenges of the coronavirus pandemic on the global economy. He added that the country's non-petroleum exports also increased during 2021 to reach $32 billion, and that the Egyptian economy is expected to see a growth of 5.5% during the current fiscal year. Also, Egypt has managed to implement mega agriculture projects that aim to increase agricultural land by almost 2 million fidans within the framework of its strategy to leverage its capabilities. This is in addition to the mega projects Egypt is implementing in the fields of transport. The President also highlighted the country's numerous projects in the field of clean energy production. He added that the world has been also hit by a great economic crisis that cast a shadow over growth rates and negatively affected states' budgets, while it was partially recovering from the COVID pandemic effects and repercussions. He added that Egypt and Russia have been engaged over the past years in the implementation of mega and ambitious projects that serve the two countries and respond to the aspirations of their peoples to realize more economic progress.